Welcome back to Watercolor Theory. Today's video is a plein air painting of the Callahan House in Longmont. It is a public space that was donated to the city of Longmont in the early 1930s, I think, during the Depression. The people who built it, I mean, you can see by the looks of the house, very expensive. This type of house was originally considered more of a Queen Anne style, and this isn't me saying this, I read this. A Queen Anne style, and then when they added the front porch to it, it became more of a Victorian look. And then that you can see a ramp for modern day access for wheelchair accessibility. But I think the family maybe fell on hard times during the Depression and donated it to the city. So now they hold weddings and different events in the yard. It's half of a city, or I guess a quarter of a city block, good size. And the yard is considered an Italianate style. The garden, it isn't like the English garden. Italianate, it might just be that because it has a couple of statues. One of the statues I recognized as being Bacchus or Dionysus, the god of wine, but there was a female. Couldn't figure out who it was, so I just typed in Bacchus and it brought up Ariadne, who he was smitten with at first sight, and she with him. So just some Greek slash Roman, couple thousand-year-old romance. I picked the house because I love architecture. I love Victorian style homes. This one is pretty nice. I mean, it's if you live on the East Coast, these are much more common in areas like that, or in Detroit back in its heyday. But out here, I mean, the city was just getting started. There aren't a lot of these. I mean, this neighborhood that this house is in does have quite a few houses. But this one does stand out quite a bit with its couple of turrets and balconies and different nooks and crannies in that front porch. There will never be a shortage of places to paint with this house. Right now, I filmed this at 9:35 in the beginning of July, and just in the hour and 15 minutes, hour and 10 minutes I was there, I took two snapshots to show the difference in lighting, and I'll put those up as well. And then throughout the year, right now the sun is almost at its northernmost peak. Actually, that might have happened in June, but throughout the day it changes. I mean, you could paint here because of the way the eaves are and different architectural elements and all of the trees and cast light, dappled light. You could paint there all day long. And so if you're having a hard time finding inspiration, maybe try to think in that way a little bit. That there might be a place. I mean, I'm an early morning person. I love being out and about early. There's nobody else out. It's just really pleasant. The people that are out are usually morning people, and they're like, good morning, and hello. So it's a little bit different. And eventually I will plein air paint at night as well, because that gives a forced end time, whereas in the morning you don't have that. But really, I only paint for about an hour and 15 minutes. And again, part of the inspiration for this was finding out that a quick draw competition, it was only 2 hours given. And I'm like, I could easily finish a painting. I mean, it's not a studio quality painting, but I could easily finish a painting in 2 hours. And so that's part of my challenge, is getting really good at that. And I've really enjoyed it. I was getting a little bogged down and a little tense with my studio paintings. And I'm at a point right now, this one right here, this bison, it's been sitting for over a month because of that, because I love the painting so far. It's just at this point, I'm like tense, I'm rigid. I'm not flowing. So I'm trying something completely different to get myself into a better headspace. And quite frankly, from a producing video standpoint and a practical, deliberate painting practice to get better, putting in brush mileage, I can do a painting in a couple of hours, whereas something like that takes much longer with the drying time as well. So enough about that, though. A couple of other things. the you can see again through the video the shifting light. It's actually two videos and a bunch of snapshots, but no shortage of lighting there. It does bring out that either I need to be uh, better about drawing, um, tighten up my details just a little bit, like just put in an extra 5 minutes at the beginning and really take my time, measure, like they show people, like, okay, it's this big, compare that, draw it in, and then, okay, this one's this big. You're just using that as a gauge to get your proportions right. And then another painting that's coming up of the Firehouse Art Gallery in Longmont. My perspective is way off, and it's wonky enough to where you can tell there's something wrong with it, but maybe not so much that uh, it doesn't look intentional. I mean, I know some artists that paint kind of distorted, but it's obvious, it's intentional that they did it this way. They made the building, bigger on the top, and like it's an imposing figure coming at you, or what have you. And this just looks like there was an earthquake. We don't get a lot of earthquakes here, so that is that. I'm putting the hashtag plein air on my site. Not that isn't going to be my focus though. I mean, on this painting, so plein air isn't always the focus. Sometimes I'll go back to some studio paintings, especially as the winter approaches. And then I've also incorporated a little bit more gouache. I have colored gouache, where now I'm trying to set a few rules with that, as far as not wanting to do too much gouache, because I don't. It does have a different appearance, and I don't want it to just stand out and be totally garish. I want it to be very selectively used. And one of the first paintings I used gouache with, it just ended up being a big mess of gouache. It wasn't even a watercolor anymore. So, and with watercolor, or with gouache, excuse me, it's almost, you can do two ways. You can paint it like watercolor, but I shouldn't say it wasn't designed to be that way, but don't expect it to look just like watercolor, because it has different binders and different proportions of pigment and moistening agents and binders and things like that. So it does have a different look. I look at it more like an acrylic, where you put down, a dab, and it's just, boom, kind of like an oil painter or an acrylic painter. And that's kind of what I want, is to get my watercolor painting vibrant and lively enough to stand out on its own, but then just a couple of little spots here and there. Like literally, I'm thinking like no more than 5 dabs of each of maybe 3 colors. I have a yellowish color for the highlight, and then a red violet or a blue violet in another area, and then probably going to butcher the pronunciation, the Juin Brilliant, which is kind of a coralish color. I really like the color, but doing kind of a split complement type setup, and then obviously white to brighten it up, or whatever. But I want to be selective about it. I don't want it to look like I was using it like whiteout or as a corrective measure. It's to accentuate, and getting to that point might take a little bit of time. And again, deliberate practice. So if you haven't yet, please like, share, subscribe, and then comments. I really want comments like, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, and maybe you just hey, keep on doing what you're doing. At times I'll talk about technique, but for the most part, it's just about mindset. And I was kind of like beating my head against the wall. What's going on? What's going on? And then when I started plein air painting, I just really drew a lot of inspiration from that, and getting new ideas, and also just kind of rounding myself out, I guess, as a better artist. I mean, it's going to take time. I'm not going to see results overnight just because I went and did plein air painting, but it will. Those brush miles will show, and throughout the week, I'll be looking for things to paint. And this past weekend, not when I did this Callahan house, but this past weekend, when I was driving to paint the firehouse, I saw 2 houses. And without permission, I won't paint somebody's house, or I won't stand outside and paint it, I should say. I don't want people to be freaked out or anything like that. So I took a few snapshots. So I figure throughout the week, I can paint those, based on snapshots. So what am I learning in plein air, and what can I bring to these snapshots, and then paint those houses as well, because the lighting on them is great. They just unfortunately are not public spaces. Now, if I was to see somebody out in their yard, that early in the morning, and if I just walked in and said, "Hey, I really love your house. Do you mind if I, paint it?" And just go for it. So again, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.